All right, the fourth choice, and this is where I'm going to circle us back
Yeah.
to my anti-lean too. But so the fourth choice I made was to create community. And I will do a little bit here of getting people up to speed here with what you said at the beginning. When I grew up, we moved around. I mean, I went to 12 different schools before I ever graduated high school. So I didn't know what community was. I didn't know what community was. I didn't know what belonging was. And in my 30s, I had created more professional success. You and I have talked about this for me than I could have ever have imagined. But then I looked around and I realized that I was friendly with everyone, but I was friends with no one. And so I intentionally took the steps to create my own community and create my own belonging. Um, your mom was a big part of that when she invited me to come in to this family I didn't know, and she invited me to be a part of this community, and I accept that invitation.
Hmm.
And so she created this sense of community and belonging for me with family that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
I mean, that is okay. So let me put that aside for a second. I want to dive in a little bit with you on, has there been a time where you didn't feel like you belonged? Now, you already gave one example. So that just right, the Quaker
Right.
example, fresh out of school, that is like to me, that sense of do I belong and how do I belong? And I don't really belong here. Is there another time, any other times that you have felt like you haven't belonged? And then how have you created that belonging?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that professionally and personally, there's examples, professionally, and this is something I've helped other people learn, which is that sometimes when you move from one company or industry to another, there's a lot of great things about being able to apply what you've learned and bring and break paradigms and do things differently. But you don't always know what you're stepping into. And coming in from the outside, coming into a company from another company, especially at a fairly senior level, especially as a woman, you can all of a sudden realize that people are like asking questions like, why are you here, and putting up barriers to your success. And that happened. I mean, I'll be frank, McDonald's is a great company, so I don't mean to like criticize it, but when I went from PepsiCo to McDonald's back in 2005, I went in at a very senior level, and I didn't realize till I got there that that was kind of rare, especially a woman coming in at the executive vice president level, especially from a totally different industry and company. And it was it I didn't realize, frankly, I had a target on my back. And there's people who often want the job that you're going in for. So this is what I try to counsel when people are thinking about moving jobs. It's like, okay, just know when you do this, like you might, what they're saying is going to be your career path may or may not. There's going to be at least one or two other people there who thought they should have had the job that you just got, and you're coming in from the outside. It doesn't mean you won't be successful, but don't be naive about it. So I think for me, I had to it kind of hurt when I realized that I was being judged and I didn't think I was going to be successful in the first year. And I didn't see that coming. Everything I'd done in my career to that point, I'd earned through merit, and it wasn't like anybody gave me anything. Quaker and PepsiCo both were very gender diverse companies years ago. So I never felt like I was chosen because I was a woman or anything like that. Come into a new environment and I just didn't really feel like I belonged, and I wondered if I had made a mistake. But then I also, because back to choice one, embrace my drive. I'm also competitive, and I'm like, I am not going to fail. I'm going to figure out what does it take. So I was a CMO there for 5 years, a global chief marketing officer. That's a long time.
Huge.
And I was really proud about one big accomplishment in particular, which is from day one. I knew that if we had an opportunity, and frankly, I think a mandate to improve the healthfulness of the products that were sold to kids, particularly the Happy Meal. So how we marketed and the nutrition, right? So, but it took a lot to even get any momentum towards developing and testing that theory. And ultimately, it was launched globally. So globally now, the healthfulness Happy Meal is quite different than it was several years ago. I'm proud of that. But I had to go back and learn a whole different way to belong, a whole different way to sell a story, to bring people along and to earn trust. So it was kind of a painful lesson. It was really worth it though, because now I feel like it gives me different ways to think about environments, or like I said, help people as they're thinking about risks they might take in their career. You have to have a pretty tough inner self, if you end up in a place where you're going to feel like you don't belong for a while. The second place is that, we kind of talked a little bit about this, but the working mom thing, I mean, so many young parents I know, and it's not just men and women, but there's still gender paradigms. And it's like, many of the communities we live in, we may be in the minority by being this, a professional mom. Not always, depends on where you live, right? But I did feel sometimes like, at the kids' school, like I was an outlier. And I just didn't feel I wasn't part of like the social community, and neither was Terry, because he didn't want to
Because he's like, I don't.
it just wasn't his thing. He was happy doing his own thing. So I felt at times like we didn't really belong at times in the community as much as I would have wished, because I felt like people looked at me like, oh, there's the working mom. And I don't know, sometimes I almost felt like what I learned is that sometimes moms who stay home are feeling like moms who work are judging them. And when I realized that, I was like, wow, that's interesting, because my husband stays home full time, full stop. I love that. I embrace that. Like, I mean, if you have the ability and the desire to have a parent at home, it's like any model that works for a family is my kind of model, right? So both working, one person working, one not. I mean, the hardest thing is to be a single parent, right? So I looked at it like any model works, but I kind of realized that there's some paradigms. So what I did is I found the other moms who got me, and there were definitely, a few that really would, they loved what I did, and they would say, hey, okay, so it's, parent teacher conference day. I bump into a friend, still a friend today in the hallway. She's like, I know you don't know where the room is. I'm just going to pick the paper for you. I'm like, yeah, thank you. I don't. So, I kind of figured out how to belong. And it seems kind of silly that as an adult woman, you could feel that little bit like, are we in high school where like who's in the club and who's not? But I have learned, it's a two-way street. I think is if you're not around the school as much, part of it's on you to figure out how much you want to be included and how do you find ways to, show up. But also find the people that accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, right. And it is. And I feel the same way, that it's to belong. It requires action on your part and action on their part. It's a
right.
And one of the things that I learned through my experience is, in order for me to create community and belonging, maybe if I shorthand it, is you get it by giving. You get by giving. And I find that in you. You are a giver. You give your time, you give your wisdom, you give your, yourself. Is there a story or a time that you could think of that you're like, yeah, I gave and here's what I got back?
Well, maybe at kind of the most macro level, we'll go back to families, because that's you and I have in common.
Yeah.
And I would say the older I got, well, first of all, as we started to raise our kids, we both, Tara and I both come from big families, and thought it would be kind of cool to have, I had siblings in the area, he has siblings in the area, they had kids, and we really wanted to create an environment where our kids had family around them. But as I continue to get older is when I realized how important that was. Things like, bringing in cousins that we maybe hadn't ever met or known. And now that if we go full circle to my kids being adults, I feel like they've got cousins all over the country, but I would do, that they're close to. And Terry's mom, unfortunately, just passed away recently. And all 13 of her grandkids came back. Each one of them felt a very close relationship to her, but even like to each other, whether it's cousins on Terry's side of the family or my side of the family. And that was because we worked hard to create that. I would do what I call the quarterly birthday parties, because there was too many kids to have individual parties. So every few months, just see as many families that could come over. We'll just do something outside in the backyard. It sounds simple, but that is creating it. It's work. I mean, if you don't work at it, it's not going to happen,
And I got to give one more little story, and then I'll move us on, because I know I always look at time, of when you gave, and I'll say what I got, and I'll bring up the airplane story. So we had met maybe a couple of months before, 6 months before, I don't know, because of Aunt Eileen. I'm on a plane flying somewhere. You're on the same plane flying somewhere. You're sitting in another seat, and we look.
Wait, was I in coach and you were first class? Is that
no?
I remember you walking past me though.
I was probably like in bulkhead, because I always like try to maneuver bulkhead. And we went.
Yeah.
And then you exchanged seats with somebody and we sat down and for 3 hours. And that is when you became my friend.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about that, we would have been strangers on that plane had we not met our moms. That's the craziest thing of all.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
from that moment, just like the story that you gave with your, birthdays and families and bringing cousins together,
Yeah.
you always included me as a part of the community, and I always accepted. And
Yeah.
this
You
really,
always make an effort. I mean, you really do make the effort to be part of the broader family community, which
yeah,
it takes
I
practice.
want it. I want, like, now I know that I know what it feels to not belong, and now I know what it feels to belong.
It's so cool.
And so,
Well, and again, I would just say, and then my daughters look up to you as a role model in business. I mean, that's the kind of thing. We've got like 3 generations,
yes.
like you're a lot younger than me. They're in their 20s, mid to late 20s, and they can connect with you as they have. It's just really cool.
Thank you for joining me for our Choose and Become interview series. You could find this episode and others at trishkendall.com. Just go to trishkendall.com/choose-become-interview-series. Or if you have a question or just want to leave a comment, email me, trish@trishkendall.com.